Where do you think the sun sets?
So they're ascetics. They're people who have abstained from the dunya. They are reciters. For what? Meaning they recite at night. They recite all night. They don't sleep at night. So, mashallah, they don't eat. Don't do this to our religion. Don't kill our deen for us. She said, Al looked at me. My husband looked at me and said, no.
Welcome back. My name's Amina. I like to talk about books. So recently I bought some new bookshelves, which you can see behind me, just the yellow ones. I normally used to have the grey ones, just the three of them, but I started to develop some stacks of books on the floor, so I thought it was time to buy some new bookshelves. And while I was rearranging all the different books back in, I decided to take off some books that I felt like I no longer wanted to keep. Removing them for a variety of reasons. Mostly just because they were books I didn't really feel too strongly about one way or the other. There are a few that I just really disliked and decided I didn't want to keep anymore. Saying that, there are still some books on the bookshelf that I don't like, but I just felt like I had a lot more to say about them, so I've still got those. So yeah, I've got about 12 books to talk about today. And I'm going to be talking about them not in any particular order, just in the order they happen to be stacked here on the side. So first of all, I have Am Pilgrim by Terry Hayes. So this is a book I actually did not finish. I think I got less than 50 pages into the book before I decided I no longer wanted to continue. The main reason being that I quite liked the very first chapter. Afterwards, from there on in, I liked his writing, but I just found that it just came across as being quite Islamophobic to me, and from, I didn't really want to continue reading it. It just didn't feel nice to read for me. And from reading other people's reviews of the book, I think they also picked up on the same theme. So in terms of anything else, I don't really have any other comments because I didn't get very far into the book. I just decided that this wasn't a book for me. Number 2 is a book called Pandemonium, which is the second in the series. I also have the first one here, which is called Delirium. They are both by an author called Lauren Oliver. There is a third book in the series as well as a fourth book set within the same world. I think I started the third book but never quite finished it. I really liked the first one actually when I read it, hence the reason I went ahead and read the second one. It's basically, I don't really remember that much because it's been probably well over a decade since I read them. They're essentially set in a world where love is treated as a disease, and our main character does fall in love and goes on I don't really remember the rest of it, but essentially that's why I'm getting rid of the books. I don't really remember the rest of it. I haven't finished the series and I don't think I'm going to be finishing them anytime ever. The next book is Fleishman is in Trouble by Taffy Brodesser-Akner. So I read this book last year. It follows a man called Toby Fleishman who is going through a divorce. He's got 2 children with his ex-wife, and it's basically follows how he's coping with his relationship with his ex-wife and his children, as well as how he's approaching kind of going into the dating scene again. It covers quite a few different themes, but I think I didn't dislike it. I just thought it was okay. And I think one of the main problems was I couldn't really identify with Toby or any of the other characters in the book in any way whatsoever. It basically screams rich people problems a bit too loudly, and yeah, I just couldn't identify with any of the things he was upset about, and it just felt he felt like a very dislikable and shallow character to me. And I don't mind disliking a character, but I think it needs to be done in a more nuanced way than Fleishman. So the next book I have is Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. I really liked reading this book in the beginning. I like her writing style, I like the way the story was crafted. My main problem with this book was that it didn't really go anywhere. So as you can tell from the title Life After Life, we're following a main character whose name I do not remember, but essentially she dies and is reborn into the same life over and over again. And in all these different lives we kind of explore how life might go differently with different choices that she might make. However, there wasn't really an overarching theme or anything to connect one life to the other. She often doesn't remember the previous lives that she's had, and she also doesn't, she sometimes will get a feeling of doing so, that's how they get something different, but there's no explanation given and there's no resolution. You get the sense by the end of the book that she dies and she's just going to be reborn again, and everything that she's done isn't really going to make much of a difference. So I thought it was quite interesting in the way it explored certain historical events, because this is set around the time of the Second World War, and how her life interacts with all the things that are going on, and how, you know, she manages to live in all sorts of different scenarios at the time. But by the end of it I didn't really feel anything, and I just wanted the book to be over because I felt like it wasn't going anywhere, I wasn't learning anything more. The next book I have is a book called The Shock of the Fall by Nathan Filer. So I think I have read this a long time ago, but the main reason I'm getting rid of this copy is I got gifted another copy in December at Christmas time by a friend of mine, and I don't need two copies. So it's back on my kind of to be read shelf because I don't remember much about it, but I'm going to read the copy that I was given at Christmas time. A Simple Life by Rosie Thomas. So this is a book I bought a very, very long time ago. So I went to a charity event probably 15 years ago now, and picked up a few books there. I didn't read it. I finally read it this year because I was making an effort to read some of the books that had been sitting on my shelf for quite some time, and I didn't like it. So essentially, and I think part of the reason is it hasn't aged very well. So this is going to be a bit of a spoiler, so if you ever think you're going to read this book, then you can skip forward a little bit. So essentially this book follows a woman who is married. She's got 2 young sons, and she's British, but her and her husband have recently moved to America for her husband's job. You get the sense that she has some resentment that she's built up against her husband within their marriage. We eventually find out that the reason for this is their very first child had Down syndrome, and she is upset that she feels like her husband made her give the child up for adoption because he didn't feel like he'd be capable of loving it. And now she decides to go on this journey to go find this child. And I don't know, I just didn't really like her. I didn't like the excuses she gave, and I ultimately didn't like the way the story resolved itself. The next is Our Endless Numbered Days. I don't remember anything about this book. It's written by Claire Fuller. I don't remember anything about it. I know I have read it, and I know I don't intend to read it again just because it's not in... Okay, let's see. So yeah, it's about a girl who lives with her father in the forest, and her father's basically made her believe that nothing else exists in the world anymore. So yeah, it's just not something I know I wouldn't pick up and read again, and I don't really remember anything that happens in it. Magyk by Angie Sage. So this is a book that I think I bought it this year, but when I started reading a lot more last year and I went back to using Goodreads, I found some books that I'd just kept on my I'd like to read shelf that I'd never bought, and so I bought it just to read it because I was curious. It is a part of a series. I'm not sure how many are in the series, but while I did enjoy it, it is for younger children, and it just wasn't one that I felt I would enjoy enough reading as an adult if I was to continue the whole series. Next we have One Day by David Nicholls. I don't really remember much about this. I know there was a movie made about it. I bought this book. You can see how old and faded it is. I bought this book when it initially came out as a paperback, and I remember enjoying it enough, but I don't really remember. I know, you know, spoiler alert, I know the woman dies at the end, so I know I'm not going to read it again. But there is a movie, so if I'm ever curious I might watch that, but I don't think I will. We Are Called to Rise by Laura McBride. So this is another book that I've owned for quite a long time, but finally read this year. So I think when I initially bought it, I did read the first chapter, and then quickly lost interest, I think, after the first chapter. And I think I know the reason why is I struggle with stories written from multiple perspectives, but not necessarily the multiple perspectives themselves. I enjoy book like A Little Life, where we get, the story told from different people's perspective. But I think when you have chapters which are dedicated to a separate character, I just struggle to get into a flow with the books, because you're constantly having to change between different narrative style, and you can't really just settle into reading it. So I think that's why I didn't finish it at the time. Having read it now, I thought it was an okay book, not one I would read again. We essentially follow a host of different characters. One is a lady whose husband has basically told her he's having an affair and he's about to leave her. We follow a young boy whose family are refugees. We follow a soldier who is currently at war, either in Afghanistan or Iraq or one of those places. And we essentially initially follow their narrative separately, and then we follow how their lives start to intertwine and interact with each other, until a tragic event happens, and then the aftermath of that. And then the final book is one that I do actually really, really dislike, and that is The Girl on the Train, by Paula Hawkins. I know this was really... So again, this is a book that I bought when it initially came out, and then did not... I think I just stopped reading after a few chapters in, because I really didn't like the main character. I know this book was so popular that it became a movie, and she's recently released another book. I really hated the resolution of this. I thought it felt like, not to be insulting to Paula Hawkins, because I've never written a book, so I know nothing about the writing process, but I really appreciate when I feel like I'm reading a well-crafted story and something that someone has really thought about how all the different events link together and work together to make that final thing work and be believable. And I just felt like she started the story, knew what her end outcome was, and then she just rushed and gambled up everything. I didn't believe the ending. It didn't make any sense to me in terms of who the actual perpetrator of the crime is. I don't think I've explained what it's about. So basically we have this lady who her husband has cheated on her. We know she no longer has a job. She's now an alcoholic, and she rides a train every day to work to pretend she's going to work so that her flatmate doesn't know that she has lost her job. And while she does this every day, the train goes behind this couple's house, and she likes to just watch this couple. And then eventually one day the woman goes missing, and there's a whole search, and she decides to basically involve herself in the investigation. And yeah, I didn't like it. So those are the books that I'm going to be getting rid of. Thank you for watching. This